Let's begin with NBC News senior White House correspondent Garrett Haake, business and data correspondent Brian Chung, and professor of economics and public policy at the University of Michigan, Justin Wolfers. Garrett, so is there progress with China or not?
I think it's unclear, Anna, but the signs point to no, if I were to shake my magic 8-ball on this. Where we are right now is you have the president saying repeatedly that there are some level of talks going on between the United States and China. Meanwhile, his Treasury Secretary, his top economic advisor, and the Chinese say that's not true. So while there may be kind of a narrow, technically accurate way to say that at some level, there are always conversations ongoing between the two largest economies in the world. There's no particular indication that any of those conversations are leading anywhere that will end in the tariffs being lowered. And that's really what this is all about. The White House is very keen to show progress across the board, that they're getting somewhere by using these tariffs as a negotiating tactic. And the Chinese, for their part, are saying that may be true, but you're not getting anywhere with us.
Brian, the markets keep spiking and then they're sinking, all based on these impromptu comments that we keep hearing from President Trump, comments that at the end of the day end up being flip-flopped or walked back. Any sign Wall Street's going to stop engaging in what appears to be a kind of a boy who cried wolf scenario?
Yeah, well, look, I mean, when you have a market that is as sensitive as any time you even hear progress on talks happening, that's certainly not good for markets, because the idea as an investor is you want certainty. You want to know that an investment that you're going to make today is going to pay out in a month, going to pay out in a year, going to pay out in 10 years. And the problem is that even companies can't forecast what they're going to be making in the quarters coming up because of this tariff uncertainty. They don't know what the policies are going to be, let alone tomorrow. They don't even know what it's going to be in the next hour. So you have the likes of American Airlines that's pulling their 2025 outlook. PepsiCo announced that they would be cutting their annual profit forecast. So they offered a forecast but said it's going to be lower. United Airlines a few weeks ago saying, you know what, we don't even know what the outcomes are here. Let's have two different scenarios for what our revenue and what our business is going to look like in the coming months. So again, this is not an environment that's filled with any certainty. Investors are reflecting that. That's the reason why markets remain volatile. Although I want to point out today in early trading for the first 30 minutes, at least, it seems like things are relatively mixed across markets. It's a quieter Wall Street day than I'm used to seeing as of the last few weeks.
We started the show, things were in the green, but as we were just now talking, things have taken a dip, at least in the Dow, so we don't know
higher
where
on the
things
S&P, but
are going to end.
Anything could happen.
Well, and you talk about how things have been changing day to day, or in some cases hour by hour, in some cases, Justin, it could be minute by minute. I just want to recap all the mixed messages on China in the last 24 hours. First, yesterday morning, the Treasury Secretary said, quote, both sides are waiting to speak to the other. Well, then, shortly after that, President Trump said this.
Are you talking to them actively now?
Actively. Everything's active.
Has there been any direct contact between the U.S. and China on trade at all?
Yeah, of course.
And
every day.
Well, then, last night, Trump's economic director, he contradicted what we just heard from the president. Listen.
The president will announce when talks happen, if they happen, but it's clear that the president and our team are open to talks. The Chinese have signaled that they're open to talks.
Then just this morning, China says any claims about negotiations happening are unfounded. Justin, what is the impact of all this? Not just the immediate impact, but longer term, too.
Look, it's amazing. I'm an economist. I've been following this closely. And if you asked me where tariff negotiations are between the two great superpowers of the global economy, my answer is not only do I not know, but different people in the White House are saying different things. It makes it impossible. Look, first of all, for businesses, we rely on China for all sorts of inputs into our own production. They rely on us as well. It makes it hard for mums and dads at home. I was talking to a friend the other day who needs a new air conditioner, and he said, should I wait? Well, tariffs are 145%, and the president said that's about to change, so you should wait. But then the president said that maybe it won't change. And then the press secretary said it definitely won't change. No one knows what's going on, mate.
Exactly. No one knows. But one thing we do know is that there's a lot of uncertainty. There is already some damage being done. People are losing their retirements. Businesses are starting to turn away product. President Trump has already admitted 145% tariff rate is so high that China basically isn't doing business with the U.S. right now. Take a listen.
I haven't brought it down. I haven't brought it still 145. I haven't brought it down. I said it's a high tariff. It is a high tariff, but I haven't brought it down. It basically means China's not doing any business with us, essentially, because it's a very high number. So when you add that to the price of a product, it's, a lot of those products aren't going to sell.
Brian, talk to us more about how Americans are already feeling the impact.
Well, I mean, I think Justin just hit on it, right? I mean, people that are trying to make decisions like buying an air conditioner are having to watch the White House press conference to see whether or not the policies are such that they should try to buy it now or try to wait. And I think that that is just another layer of uncertainty that is very much similar to what Wall Street and a lot of these C-suite offices are facing as well. But I do think, to kind of loop back to an earlier question that you had about whether or not markets are willing to engage in this boy who cried wolf game, I do think, though, that there's a fair point to be made about the tail wagging the dog in this scenario, because, yes, it is indeed the case that, Wall Street has been really, really whipsawing off of what we've been seeing out of Washington, D.C. But at the same time, it was the bond markets that appeared to maybe convince the president to pare back on those so-called reciprocal tariffs during those, discussions a few weeks ago, and maybe even suggest that the conversations with the retail executives of Home Depot, Target, and Walmart earlier this week maybe convinced them to also dial down the rhetoric specifically on China, given that so many of those retailers source from China. But I do think the question here is, can negotiations be had? I think another interesting thread here is that a lot of diplomats are in Washington, D.C. right now for those IMF meetings. So it's not that you really even need to get on a plane going all the way to Beijing to have conversations. There are people right up on K Street right now to have those conversations. So the door is open. That's what the Chinese government has said. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs has said this over and over again. The door is open if the U.S. wants to talk. The question is the United States, to put this in relationship terms, in the talking stage? We don't know.
Well, let's talk to Garrett about who they're talking to, because we heard from the White House press secretary in the last couple of days that there are some 18 written offers or proposals that have been presented. Do we know which countries and how far along they are?
I can't say with a cool Australian accent, but I'm going to put "no one knows what's going on, mate" on like a sign I can hold up to answer questions like these, because the White House is not being forthcoming about that kind of information, perhaps not wanting to raise expectations that they will get 18 trade deals. They're not saying who these countries are who have, they say, submitted these written offers. I think the countries that we know that there are serious trade negotiations going on with, really the two big ones are India and Japan. Obviously, the vice president was just in India. The president had hosted both leaders of those countries here at the White House before these so-called reciprocal tariffs went into effect. And I think that's why those negotiations are at more of an advanced stage than perhaps the other 16 to 18 that might have submitted some kind of offer, because there were already discussions happening. Now,
the White House appears to be looking for an off-ramp to its trade policies that have rattled world markets. The Wall Street Journal first to report that the Trump administration is considering slashing China tariffs to de-escalate the trade war. The news temporarily sent major indexes soaring. Markets lost momentum, however, after Bloomberg News quoted Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent as saying Trump that has not offered to take down U.S. tariffs on China on a unilateral basis, a point later reiterated by White House Press Secretary Carolyn Leavitt.
This is the art of the deal. President Trump is using the leverage of the United States to bring nations to the negotiating table. That includes China. Let me be clear. There will be no unilateral reduction in tariffs against China.
I would love for her to be clear, but that is not what is happening here. Trump's art of the deal follows another course change on Tuesday when asked if he would consider firing Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell, who he had called a, quote, major loser as recently as Monday. The president said this.
You have no intention of firing Jerome Powell. You have any plans on doing that?
None whatsoever. Never did. The press runs away with things. No, I have no intention of firing him. I would like to see him be a little more active in terms of his idea to lower interest rates. This is a perfect time to lower interest rates. If he doesn't, is it the end? No, it's not. But it would be good timing. It could have taken place earlier. But no, I have no intention to fire him.
Tim O'Brien is back with us and joining us. Caleb Silver, editor-in-chief of Investopedia. Mixed message salad, huh?
Yeah, kind of what we've been getting for the past several weeks, really for the past several months, and that's why you're seeing all this volatility in the stock market. These days of 1%, 2% swings, there's nothing normal about that. It's very unsettling for investors, very unsettling for businesses that are trying to make decisions here when you really don't know what's coming next.
So those are the markets, right? What do the markets tell us about where the economy more generally is headed?
Well, I think the markets in the short run are just a barometer of emotion, but in the long run, they're a barometer of corporate profits. And I think corporations across the U.S. landscape are concerned that they're going to be less profitable and ultimately have to lay off people and have fewer things to sell because of an unhinged tariff policy. And you know, only 20% of Americans own stocks directly. Around 60% own it through retirement plans. And the administration keeps saying, don't pay attention to the market grief. This isn't where real people live. But the reality is this will affect real people ultimately in terms of the cost of things they buy, the interest rates they pay on mortgages, the interest rates on their credit cards, the availability of food on store shelves. It will hit them. And Trump's aware of that, which is one of the reasons he's teeing Jerome Powell up. He is going to blame a recession on Jerome Powell.
Because Jerome Powell didn't listen to his advice.
Yes, and it had nothing to do with my tariff policies. Jerome Powell just wouldn't lower interest rates, and it's his fault. And then he's going on national television saying he didn't say exactly what he did say, which is that he wants to get rid of Jerome Powell.
Do you think that what he's trying to do, make Jerome Powell the fall guy?
Oh, I think potentially, but also lowering interest rates is going to be no help when we already have rising prices. Lower interest rates stimulates more buying. That stimulates more inflation, and the Fed chair knows that more inflation is coming our way. Why do that now when you could have a double dose of inflation? We just got through several years of it, so that's kind of why the Fed is in a bad place right now. And yeah, potentially looking for a fall guy here because that's sort of...
Trump is getting owned by China. We've talked about this. He's no match for Xi. And this isn't you got to be pro-Trump or pro-Xi or whatever, but it's like, look, objectively, he is getting dog-walked right now. He's already admitted defeat, where he's like, this whole... What has been one of his consistent through lines going all the way back to 2015? One being a discriminatory a-hole. Two, being nuts generally. And three, it's been anti-China talk. People think, okay, it's been attacks against immigrants. Yes, very much so. Very much so. But right from the beginning as well, it was always China. We're gonna fight China. Guys, we're gonna fight China. Like the whole thing, right? And now all of a sudden he punches China a little bit. They don't even flinch because again, China's a 5,000-year-old civilization. The United States is a baby compared to them. China doesn't even really hit back except to retaliate exactly as much as what the United States did. Let's be clear, right? Like the countries, and this is not just China, but other countries haven't said, okay, United States, you hit us, we're going to hit you plus 10, plus 5, plus 15%, whatever. All the countries have been like, okay, Donald, you put a tariff on us, we'll just match the tariff. And then he's like, oh my, how brilliant are these guys? How could this happen to me? How is this possible? This is what's going to happen. China's defeated Donald Trump, and now China, and not the United States, is going to be seen as the leader of global trade. Maybe for the next generation.